When you think about your future, you know what calls to you. Meaningful work, happiness, growth, and sharing these values with others. But how will you find all of that? There are many paths forward, including one you may not have considered. The military provides countless opportunities to pursue your calling, where you can be part of something bigger than yourself, while still being yourself and having the future you want. You have a calling, we have an answer. Learn more at todaysmilitary.com.
We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane Page. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, I'm doing well. This is a slightly strange day for us, Monday. I was saying off air, draft season is always incredibly busy, and I've managed to time my paternity leave, Shane, with having 4 weeks off, so I'm back to my actual job tomorrow. So today feels very weird, but we're on a bit of a time limit for once, and we always say that, but I'm going to stick to it today, or my wife may strangle me. And if you hear any child crying in the background, that's the joys of my life currently. But I'm looking forward to this one. Day 2 is where your money's made. It's easy to pick out day 1, guys. Let's be honest. I think, especially for the Eagles, there's not much difference in this class between like 10 and 35, in my opinion. So this is where the good teams, I think, really, really find value. So we'll do it like we did last week. We'll go position by position. Before we get started, I will just very quickly plug both of our draft guides on Patreon. Mine was released yesterday, feels like a while ago, and you've also got one out as well over on Patreon. Tommy Lawler retweeted it today, which was a nice moment. I know Tommy listens, so shout out Tommy if you're listening now. We both said off air, one of the first people that we ever, I think it might have been your first ever. I remember his pod with Kemsky like 10 years ago, with 2 of the first BGM podcasts that I listened to. So it's always cool when someone like that retweets your work. But yeah, I say we get into it, Shane.
Yeah, reading Eagles Blitz was one of my first engagements with Philly sports at all, and I don't read a lot of other Eagles people or listen to a lot of Eagles stuff now that I do it, but Tommy's is one that I do, and it's always a nice surprise. You and I have giddily messaged each other a few times, like, "Hey, one of your tweets is in Tommy's article," so that's always cool for sure. But yeah, let's dive in. And like Jonny said, we're recording at a weird time because the draft is Thursday. And so, round 2 and 3 is Friday, but we wanted to give you guys as much time as possible to listen to this. So trying to get it out on Monday has our schedules a bit off. But if you missed our day 1 draft targets for the Eagles, that is up in the podcast feed, Eagles Pinpool Network, ad-free version on Patreon. You can go and listen to that. And we basically went through every position and talked about guys that we could see the Eagles being interested in the first round. We're basically going to do the same thing for day 2 today. And so we'll just walk through the positions. We'll talk through some of the prospects. And so let's lead it off with quarterback, where I have nobody. There's nobody the Eagles should be considering on day 2 at quarterback. Same for you?
I haven't even watched quarterbacks this year. I've watched every position. I think I watched about 132 prospects, was it? And I didn't even touch the quarterbacks. I just couldn't get around to it. I know I've seen people speak about the hype around Jalen Milroe being very similar to Hurts and blah, 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 but I just can't see it. I think the Carson Wentz Jalen Hurts draft in hindsight was probably a little bit more about the Eagles having internal concerns about Carson Wentz more than we are led to believe. And I do not believe the same is the case of Jalen Hurts. So no, I think we can skip quarterback. I've realized looking at my board as well, Shane, because I watch so many people, that for some positions, I could just stand here and list 15 guys. So maybe we'll look at, for specific ones, maybe our favorite fits or whatever, or guys we would consider. Because I'm looking at my offensive line list and realizing that I would just be reading out 12 names, and that might not be the most interesting thing. So if you're on Patreon, you can see the big boards. But yeah, we'll go through maybe some guys we disagree with as well. But yeah, I really like where the Eagles pick Ridley. I know it's weird because they're late. I'd hate to pick 12 in this draft because I just think you're going to get stitched up once the first 7 or 8 go. So I think the second round is quite similar, actually. There's loads of guys. I'm like, yeah, I might take him at 50. I might take him at 80. I'm not like overly fussed about a lot of them, like where they go. I think it's just that kind of class this year.
All right. Well, so no quarterbacks. Let's talk about running backs. I mean, I feel like there's several running backs I like in this range, but I don't think the Eagles should really take a day 2 running back with Saquon Barkley. So we could talk about some of the prospects like Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, but at the end of the day, like those guys are going to be off the board by the 3rd round, and I can't justify the Eagles picking a running back in the 2nd round. So I don't really have a lot here. One guy I'll shout out is Dylan Sampson, who, if the Eagles took him in like the 3rd round, I would like that pick. I really like Dylan Sampson. Just a speedy guy from Tennessee. He's a really good pass blocker. I mean, it's questionable if he can like survive a high workload, but that wouldn't be what you were asking him to do in Philadelphia behind Saquon Barkley. So I'm really enamored with his speed and impressed with his pass protection. He was tasked with that a lot at Tennessee. So he's a name I could shout out. But really, there's not a lot that interests me in running back in day 2. There's a lot of day 3 guys that like throw your darts, but I just don't think day 2 is really where the Eagles should go there.
No, we hit the running back position, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago as well when with Chuck. So the only one that I would shout out really is that I absolutely love, and when the Eagles aren't going to take him, and he'll go, I won't be surprised if he goes in the 1st round because I think someone always sneaks in, but Travion Henderson. Reason being is I wouldn't invest a 2nd round pick on him. I mean, if they did, I'd secretly be absolutely buzzing, to be honest with you. But I just think the speed he has and his pass protection, Shane, you mentioned pass protection. I don't think he might be the best in the class. When you talk about like, I don't want like a Jahmyr Gibbs comparison, because I think comparing anyone to Jahmyr Gibbs is mental. But I think if you want someone to come in and take like 8 to 12 touches a game off Barkley, maybe like 6 carries and 3 catches, that kind of range, I think Henderson is such a luxury pick. And I think the Eagles are in a position to maybe do something like that. They won't and they shouldn't. But he would be the one that I mentioned. If I had to pick one, I'm sort of enamored with his sort of profile rather than him individually, if that makes sense. But yeah, I highly doubt day 2 they look at running back.
Yeah, it would not be the wisest use of resources, but if Travion Henderson was there at 64, I couldn't possibly be mad about it because he's a really good player.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
So, okay, well, let's go to wide receiver.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wide receivers that I have like day 2 grades on. And so I don't know, I'll throw it to you first here.
Yeah,
talk to me. Who's a wide receiver or 2 that you could like for the Eagles on day 2?
God, this is I tell you what, I'll split them up into 2. I think this is one where I have like 2 very distinct tiers. So I think like my round 2 guys are significantly above. So I'm not going to mention Luther Bird or Norek Buka because I'm going to assume that they're long gone. So the guy I have at the top would be Jaden Higgins, or I can't pronounce his name, Elek Iona. Yeah, they're like 2 like in the middle tier, shall I say?
Those are my next 2 guys too. So.
Oh, really? Yeah, I think Jaden Higgins, I think will go in the 1st round. I just said that about Travion Henderson as well. They can't all, but I just think maybe some of the guys that have been predicted to go in the 1st aren't that good. And you get people like Higgins, and all of a sudden you look at his profile, you're like 6'4", 214, 9.85 RAS score, 4.47 speed, like good in contested situations, fluid. And you're like, oh, why is this guy going to not go in the 1st round again? I think players like that often do. We've seen it in the past. So I would have loads of interest in Jaden Higgins if he was to fall. And then my other one in round 2, which I think is too high for this guy, but I'm going to shout him out in sort of the round 2, maybe early round 3, is Carl Williams. I think Carl Williams is an absolute star, I think, to be honest with you. And I think you're starting to see more hype from draft Twitter around him. I just think he's a really, really good football player, and I think he matches exactly what the Eagles do. An explosive option with inside-outside versatility. That's exactly what I wrote, and I think that's what he gives you. He gives you down the field. I'm just philosophically about receiver, Shane. I have no interest in slot-only guys. So I think the way the best offenses are run these days, I'd say don't lend themselves to slot receivers. I think the way the Eagles are built with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown both being interchangeable as X or Z's, I don't think you want a slot only, because if you take a slot only, then you're basically just shoving Devontae Smith and AJ Brown out wide more. And I think the whole idea is that you want to have someone that's interchangeable. Mm-hmm. And I think Jahan Dotson does give you that, but Jahan Dotson doesn't give you the explosiveness. he doesn't seem to give them the explosiveness anyway. So Carl Williams would be my favorite day 2 guy. Oh, sorry, round 2 guy. And then going into round 3, there's loads, isn't there? Like Harris Royals.
Yeah, here, hold on. Let's pause before
Yeah.
you get there.
Yeah, sorry,
you mentioned slot only guys, and so
yeah,
with both Io Manor and Higgins,
yeah.
I wrote for both of them. I said that Io Manor's best fit is a Z receiver, but I think he could bump into the slot despite the fact
that's fine.
He took less than 14% of his snaps there at Stanford, but I think it's a good fit for him. So I think he's like your Z/slot type guy. And for Jaden Higgins, I said that he could be an X receiver, but I also think like some of his best usage could be as a big slot, like a power slot. And so with both of those guys, I think you can put them both in the slot. I think you could put them both outside. And I think it gives you a lot of flexibility in what you want to do with receivers. So I just wanted to mention that because that's literally what I had written down for scheme fits for both of them.
And I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think you're going to get an X receiver in day 2. I think it's more just drafting someone who can occasionally go out wide rather than like you are fully stuck in the slot. And again, that's just my personal preference of the way I would build this roster. I think the Eagles also see it quite similarly. You said you had Jaden Higgins as well as your next guy up, yeah?
Yeah. I actually have Jaden Higgins and Io Manor both above Luther Burden, but
interesting. I don't hate that either, to be honest. I probably bottled it and put Burden up just because I'm scared of missing that badly on the talent because I think he's more talented. But I think I agree with you that the film is better. Then round 3, there's a ton of guys, Shane. This draft has got so many explosive down the field receivers. I think this is a lovely class for the Eagles, to be honest, in round 3. Round 3 wide receiver, like round 4, 5 running back, I think is really good. Go defense 1 and 2, then go receiver running back, something along the lines of that I like. There's so many explosive guys. You've got guys like Trey Harris, who's a bit more like long speed, I would say, rather than quick, but he is good down the field. If you want to go for like a short and shifty guy, you've got Jalen Royals, who's really good with the ball in his hands after the catch. If you want to get a bit more risky, I think in terms of not the best film, but you've got guys like Isaiah Bond, 4.3940, and can fly downfield as well. So I think you've got a lot of explosive. The one that I will give a big shout out to that I'm a little bit fascinated by is Savion Williams. Just a bit of a ridiculous athlete, 6'3", 222 pounds. Like if you just type in Savion Williams highlights, you'll see like 3 acrobatic catches and go, oh, is this guy a first round pick? Because he's got everything in terms of like height, weight, speed, that kind of like massive athlete. And he's incredibly raw. Like production's not there, can't get off press, loads of manufactured touches. Hands need work, which is the big issue I have with him because I think hands are harder to improve than some of the other stuff. But if the Eagles are like, you know what, round 3, we don't need to play him right now. We've got 3 good wide receivers. He can just sit there and play 5-10 snaps a game as he develops in round 3. And then by the end of the year, he'll be better. I think that's fine. I think the Eagles took Alex Hunt last year and they've shown that they're happy to take a developmental guy in round 3 if they think he's got the traits. And I think Savion Williams absolutely has the traits you'd bank on. Any one of those guys that I mentioned or anyone that I didn't mention that you had that I do not in that sort of category?
Yeah, the 2 I had jotted down for round 3 are Savion Williams and Jalen Royals. Williams converted 89% of his contested catch opportunities in 2024.
He's a
they also used him as a gadget player a lot. They gave him 51 rushing attempts, which I do think hurt his like development as a wide receiver, but it tells you something when like a team is going to those lengths to get the ball in a guy's hands, and there's things you can do there. His hands, you mentioned, is an issue. He's got over a 10% career drop rate. I have him down as he's the ultimate like boom bust developmental guy. And then Jalen Royals is another one of those guys that I saw as a Z receiver that you could also bump into the slot. Issues with press coverage that you want to try to protect him from a little bit. He can get bullied throughout his route stems out to the sideline, but I think he's a really good route runner and he's got a lot of short area quickness and he could be an exciting guy just to have in the building as well, where the Eagles don't really have a lot outside of their top 3. So Royals and Williams were the 2 guys I had written down for round 3.
Yeah, I think they tried to look at receiver last year, didn't they? And I think it's fair to say it probably didn't land. I think they'll be looking at a wide receiver 4, which is an important position. I think when you're a really good team, every bit of depth matters, I think, especially on offense. I don't think you want a situation if AJ Brown goes down for a couple of weeks or something where you're just running at Devontae Smith and Jahan Dotson. Like, I think the Eagles need something else. And I think it's a good draft class towards the back end of day 2 for receivers. Right. What about tight end, Shane?
Tight end, round 2, Mason Taylor.
Yep, 100%.
And
He might
we talked about
1.
him a little bit. Like, I would be okay if the Eagles traded back to like 38 and took Mason Taylor there. I think he's really good. He's a good blocker. You're going to put him in line. I think he's got receiving chops as well. I just think he's a really good fit, especially if the Eagles move on from Dallas Goedert.
Yep, 100%.
And then you get into round 3 guys. I like Gunnar Helm from Texas.
Yeah,
I think
I have him later. Yeah.
Okay. I think he's like the inverse Mason Taylor. I think he's a better receiver than blocker, but I think you can put him in line some, and I think you could develop that. He's got really good hands.
That the testing was really poor, wasn't it? But apparently he was injured, so this is where the draft stuff's all good fun.
Yeah, so he had a 4.49 relative athletic score, but he sprained his ankle on a false start on his first trip on the 40. So it's hard to.
He still ran it, didn't he? Which I think is such a stupid idea.
Agreed.
Like if I'm his agent, I'm going, what are you doing? He ran a 4.84, which is basically undraftable at tight end, really. 241 pounds, that's non-existent. Why he didn't just fall to the ground? Just fall over. But anyway, man, it
was a false start too. Like he sprained it and then lined up and ran anyway. So
he's a little bit too early for me personally. I agree with you, Mason Taylor. Where do you have Arroyo? Are you?
I have him. So I have Arroyo and Terrence Ferguson also, guys. I'd be okay with in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I'm up on both of them. I would be okay with them in the 2nd. I really like both of them. Arroyo more so, but I think both of them are really, really good. I
have Arroyo ahead of Ferguson.
Yes, me too. I have Arroyo, Taylor, Ferguson.
Okay.
I think Ferguson's just like the most safe tight end you can have. If you want like a guaranteed like tight end 2 who maybe becomes a tight end 1, I know everyone likes to compare him to Jake Ferguson because of the name Ferguson, but it's sort of apt in many ways. I think the hard thing for the Eagles this year is just if you're going to go into a draft and try and replace Dallas Goedert, assuming he goes, that's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to draft a starting tight end. So I'm looking at someone who could be a tight end 2 to Goddard this year. If Goddard was to go, I wouldn't look at Mason Taylor and just go, boom, there you go. He's your starter. I think he'd still start. I think all of Arroyo, Ferguson, and Taylor would start off as tight end 2s. I'd be happy with any of them in round 2, to be honest with you. I'm probably around higher than you on all of them.
Okay.
And then the other guy I have in round 3, which I know you detest, and I get why, is Harold Fannin. One of the most, if not the most interesting players in the draft class, Shane.
He's very interesting.
Production, absurd, like not even like average production, like legitimately. I'm bringing up his profile now, but like it's sort of incredible, isn't it? For draft, you can have Harold Fannin is Dane Brugler's, for example, tight end 6, right? So he's got him at 82 overall. Brugler. I mean, you look at Fannin's production: 117 catches for 1,555 yards and 10 touchdowns, and then the guy he has in front of him is like Terrence Ferguson, who's like 590 yards. The guy in front of that, Arroyo, 590 yards. Harold Taylor, 546 yards. It's
Harold Fannin he's 4 pounds heavier than AJ Brown, but he's 3.5 inches taller. I just wrote I just think he's a wide receiver. Like
really, I put him at H-back. Yeah,
he's a terrible blocker.
He can play in line. Yeah, he is.
And so I put down for his scheme fit. I said, move piece / big slot wide receiver in a personnel diverse offense with a creative play caller.
Yeah.
Relatively inexperienced at the position, coming from a non-premier school. And then I asked, what is his ceiling? What even is his position? So
I'm not sure that's for the Eagles either. I'm not sure you count the Eagles as a creative play caller, in all honesty.
Exactly.
I think you want him to go to like a Sean Payton or someone who prioritizes like these tight ends that are undersized.
If he goes to the Denver Broncos, he will be incredible. I just don't think the Eagles would use him correctly. Like I'm not out on Ferguson as a player, but I'm out on him for the Eagles for sure.
I think that's where it comes to everyone being so team specific. Like in fantasy, I might take Harold Fannin a lot earlier than I'd have him ranked for the Eagles, because I'm not sure the Eagles are the best team to get out of him, especially if you're looking at him at like H-back and stuff. I want him to be able to block for Saquon Barkley, and he can't. He's a really, really, really odd player, though, because that production for a tight end is absurd. And he didn't test horrendously. He didn't test well, but it wasn't like, oh, my goodness, this is a guy who can't who can't test. I think he was like a 7.5 RAS score. So, or 7.82. Sorry. It's not like.
Yeah.
But
if you run it as a wide receiver, which is maybe more what he's going to play, it's only a 5.3. So.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with him.
Any other names at tight ends? Any other names?
Not really.
No, I said the only one I would maybe consider, and I probably wouldn't, is Mitchell Evans. I would take him at the start I'd take him in round 4. I don't have him as this grade. I'm just mentioning him to throw him out there. I think he's gone a bit under the radar because of his injury history, which is very worried. But he tested pretty well. And what I liked about him was contested catch situations, big radius. He ran quite a few slot fades and got vertical. And I think the Eagles don't necessarily have a tight end currently who can get down the field outside of, Dallas Goedert. So he's one that I threw out there, maybe not day 2, but the end of day 2 wouldn't be a disaster for me. I think he's pretty raw, but I also thought Jadix Hunt was incredibly raw last year. So, right, let's move on to the position that we're going to somehow have to rattle through these guys because God knows how many we've got. I've got about 10 offensive linemen the Eagles could take. I think there are loads they could take. There's specific tackle-only guys. There's guard-tackle combinations. Should we just say... Let's do it round by round really quickly. I think that might be the easiest way. Any round 2 linemen that you have highlighted you could see the Eagles going after?
Tate Ratledge. I love Tate Ratledge.
Yep.
I would not be terribly disappointed if they traded back and took him in the 30s or 40s.
Really?
I'm very high on Tate Ratledge.
Just starting right guard, bang, plug and play.
Yeah, played over 2,000 snaps at right guard. He's
the same thing. Only 5 penalties in 2,000 snaps as well, by the way. 9.97 RAS score. Yeah, I literally, the Eagles want the starting right guard straight away. Draft Ratledge. That's what I put. Yeah. I said I wouldn't do first because of upside. I think in terms of one position, short arms, I think cost him a little bit, but I think I get your point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would easily take him anywhere in the second round, including trading up in the second. Yep. Josh Connerly could be interesting in the second round. He's a tackle only guy, I think. But he's small. And that's the thing is the Eagles like bigger tackles and he's small. He's only 6'4" and 5/8. But he's really athletic. It comes at the expense of a lot of power right now. But if you're drafting a tackle only, which he is a left tackle and you're probably wanting him to flip sides.
That's the problem.
Either way, he's got a year or two, which I'm not crazy about doing that in the second round, but I'm more okay with it there in the first round. Yeah. So Josh Connerly potentially as a backup tackle / future Lane Johnson replacement.
Yep.
And then you get into some more interior guys, Donovan Jackson,
100%
from Ohio State. You could go get him. Gray Zabel, although it seems like Gray Zabel is probably going to be gone way earlier. Tyler Booker, who tested terribly, but Tyler Booker's played a lot of left guard, a little bit of right guard. Maybe you flipped him to right guard. So those are the guys I kind of had as round 2 considerations, mostly interior guys, and then Connerly.
Yeah, for what it's worth, what's his name? Tommy Lawler had Gray Zabel being the pick at 32 in his mock today that I read, which is interesting, mainly for versatility rather than a guaranteed starter. And I think that'll probably annoy some people not having a guaranteed starter at 32, but I think I get where he's coming from.
He has played all 5 offensive line.
He's played all 5 positions, yeah, and I think he could probably beat out Steen at guard as well.
Now,
I've got
saying he's played all 5 positions is a bit of a misnomer because it was 17 snaps at center. Yes. But outside of that, he's played at least 220 snaps at every other position.
He may have played center lower down the line as well. I'm sure I listened to a podcast that said he might have played it at high school or something so he knows how to snap anyway. I might have read that. I might be wrong. I've got similar guys to you, Donovan Jackson, Tate Ratledge. I'm higher on Josh Connerly. I think he'll go earlier. I'm higher on Zabel. I think he'll go earlier. My other 2 round 2 guys I had were Ursary. Oh, these names, Shane. And Jonah. Help me out.
I'm not sure on how to say that.
Yeah, that's a great
He's from Arizona. Jonah Savanai or something like that.
So I had Ursary because if you put him at guard, he's got a 9.99 RAS score. If you put him at tackle, he's got a 9.89, 6'6", 341. The Eagles like big guards. I mean, actually, this is interesting, Shane. Just quickly, I was thinking about this philosophically. I kept writing down, the Eagles really like big guards because Mekhi Becton. And then I was like, who was the right guard the year before? Cam Jurgens.
Becton?
I was like, they're the polar opposite. You could not get more polar. Guess what? The Eagles run game was fantastic with Cam Jurgens at right guard. And the Eagles run game was fantastic with Mekhi Becton at right guard. So I'm like, I don't know. I think Jeff Stoutland will just build his line depending on who he gets. I think Jonah, I'll call him, is a similar guy who could start at right guard. And I think he has that sort of tackle guard versatility. He's another one that I mentioned as being like a big guy who could possibly play both of them. I think round 3 offensive line is just like, there's a lot of names. Charles Grant is by far the most popular name, and I know why, because he sort of has that. I think he's the most nailed on. The Eagles are going to take Charles Grant in the 3rd round pick I've ever seen. Like, everyone just says it because long athlete, could play him at guard, could play him at tackle, like sort of needs coaching. But I think there's loads of guys. Like, I won't go through all of them in detail, but if the Eagles want like a lengthy pass blocker, I think Ozzy Trapedo makes a lot of sense. He's not a run stuffing like Mauler, which is why I moved him down a little bit. Then 2 guys I liked at the bottom. I think Anthony Belton, I don't know where he's expected to go, but I think he could even play once again. It could play tackle or guard. I think you could see him similar to Mekhi Becton. Stick him inside at 336 pounds. Then you got Miles Fraser. I think you could basically draft him in the 3rd and he could walk straight in and challenge Tyler Steen at right guard as well. There's quite a lot of these like interesting players. I'm not really sure what to do with them. Like Marcus and Bo's another one. Played a little bit of tackle, but only has 32-inch arms. So again, could he be someone else you draft and kick inside? Cameron Williams, sorry, I'm just listing offensive linemen now. Cameron Williams is probably my favorite, either like with Charles Grant. If those of them that aren't sure about him, just like insane mobility, like really long arms, 18 penalties his last 16 career starts, so like very raw, like that kind of classic physical traits that badly needs coaching. He won't be starting anytime soon. He couldn't test because I think he was injured, or he didn't. I think he was injured. So he could drop a little bit further and maybe be someone that you could start at guard or develop him at tackle. Any other names there that you wanted to shout out before we flip sides?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Wyatt Milam from West Virginia?
Yeah, back and forth. I love the way he plays, so I'm just scrolling down to my comments. Trying to remember these players is impossible. I end up just reading half my notes out. If I remember correctly, he was the one that was incredibly physical, and I think the Eagles already like the way he plays. I think he could compete at right guard immediately or develop as a backup tackle. I said really strong hands, really physical, good anchor, but I wasn't sure he had like the athleticism that the Eagles normally go after. I think he's more like brute, upright, like downhill run blocker. I don't think he's going to do much like pulling and climbing to the second level. So I'm not sure. If the Eagles want to go like Mekhi Becton style, which have a brute at right guard, although he's a lot smaller, I think maybe you could go that way. But I had him a little bit lower because of the arms and the lack of, I didn't see a lot of like real athleticism, which the Eagles historically have targeted.
I had him down as the guy in the 3rd.
Bang on the 3rd. I had him 3rd round.
He's interesting because I feel like he projects best to guard at the NFL level because of his athleticism and his arm length. And he never played. Like, he's played 2,300 snaps at left tackle, 600 at right tackle, and 1 snap on the interior in his career. So, but I wrote in my scheme fit that his best fit is going to be a play action / run heavy scheme that allows him to attack or jump set to limit foot speed issues. Also gives emergency backup swing tackle ability. And those are both big check marks for the Eagles. They like having that swing tackle, and they're a really run heavy team. So I could see him thriving there.
Shane,
he's a guy I'd be interested in.
We're proper late and I need to speed up. So apologies for me then asking you another question, but what are you doing with Tyler Booker? We didn't get to him in the last show because I hadn't watched him. And then I watched him and I'm sort of think he's one of the most interesting players in the whole class. Where are you on him?
He was one of the guys that I would be okay with the Eagles taking in the 2nd round.
Right.
I feel he tested terribly at the combine.
He can't move. Like,
3.6 relative athletic score. I thought his athleticism was adequate. Like, I didn't think it was great.
I didn't. I'm not sure you can ever ask him to pull. But he's the strongest guy I've ever seen in terms of grip strength.
He's going to struggle with lateral agility, struggles to climb to the 2nd level. When he does, he's got poor tracking ability, but he's just like power and dense. I said that he would be good in a run heavy scheme that focuses on like duo downhill or pin pull stuff where he can pin down, and which the Eagles love to do. So I think he's interesting. Really if they wanted to take him in the 2nd round, I'd be fine with it. He's another one that would be flipping from left guard to right guard, 1,700 snaps at left guard, only 167 at right guard, but he would be interesting for sure.
I'll be honest, Shane, I think the Eagles could have interest at 32. I know he doesn't move like a Stoutland guy, but he is so strong. And I think Stoutland could find a way to be like, do you know what? I basically think if you're going to survive with Tyler Booker, you need two good athletes next to him. Or enter Cam Jurgens and Lane Johnson. Like you have to cover up that athleticism. Okay, we can't pull the right guard as much. Oh well, we'll just pull Lane Johnson. Oh, we can't pull the right guard as much. Oh well, we'll kick out Cam Jurgens. Like I think the Eagles have got a team that could do it. He's such an interesting guy because he's like the strongest blocker I've ever seen in terms of like just when I wrote on his positives, if he gets his hands on you, it's game over. Like you don't come back from it. The problem is him getting his hands onto you. So maybe not for this podcast, but I didn't watch him last time. So
I would be so sad if the Eagles took him with Tate Ratledge on the board because I like Ratledge so much better, but I would like Booker.
Right, let's flip sides because we could waffle about these players all day, and we will do some more for Patreon this week as well.
Okay, let's go interior defensive line. Second round guys. I have Kenneth Grant, which is your big nose tackle run defender guy. That's going to signal we're moving on from Jordan Davis after this year, more than likely. But Kenneth Grant would be interesting. I also put down for guys in the second round, I put TJ Sanders.
Yep, he's my top. That too.
Yeah, penetration pass rush specialist with the tools to develop into an every down run defender. I would want him rushing like 3-4 eye early in his career. I think he'd be good there. And then Omar Norman Lott, who we talked about last time, just like elite pass rushing traits, barely plays and commits a penalty like every 30 snaps. But if he hits, he's going to be so good. So those were the guys I had for the second round.
Where have you got Alfred Collins and Tyleek Williams? I had them in round 2 as well.
I listed, so I gave Tyleek Williams where'd it go? I gave him a second round grade. Actually, I gave him and Alfred Collins both second round grades. But I listed Alfred Collins as the third round for this exercise of like where I would want the Eagles to take him. I just skipped over Tyleek Williams because I didn't want to write down too many names. But
yeah, Tyleek's a weird one, isn't it? Because he just can't rush the quarterback, but he's got traits that suggest he can rush the quarterback.
Yeah.
But his pass rush win rate was like 6%, which is like non-existent. So yeah, I've got the same names. I'll give you a few round 3 guys. I'll give you a couple of names that I'm really interested by. CJ West, I'm way higher on consensus than. I really liked him. Tested really well. Decent pass rush win rate. Like really, I give a lovely little fact for you. His 1.73 10-yard split was the fastest among any players weighing 315 pounds this year. That was in Brugler's the Beast. But I'm not surprised when I read that at all because I think he jumps off the line of scrimmage and he's quite twitchy despite being 316 pounds. I think he's expected to go later. But I think he could be a really interesting guy to add. And then the other guy I mentioned on the Patreon show before, but if you want the most undersized 282-pound guy who can probably never play a single snap in the run game in his whole career, but you want to just let him go on third down, it would be Peebles from Virginia Tech, just like insanely productive as a pass rusher for a defensive tackle, but cannot play on run downs like in the slightest. They're 2 guys in the third round that I will be looking at. Anyone else in the third you wanted to particularly shout out?
Darius Alexander from Toledo could be interesting in the third round. Well. He was a defensive end as a recruit, converted to actually he played as an offensive tackle and then he switched back to defense. So he's got a weird path, but
the problem with him is his age and the fact he's never really done it at small school.
He's a 6th year senior. I could not find a birthday for him, but he's a
25 as a
senior.
Rookie. 25 as a rookie I've got, and never had like double-digit career sacks in college despite coming from Toledo.
Yeah, he's a physical freak, but he just lacks consistency. Exactly. He needs a better rush plan. Like
he was 21, first round pick. 25, teams might go, that's who he is.
Yeah, if you can get it all to click, which I don't think is unreasonable to suggest of a prospect from Toledo that maybe doesn't have the best coaching, not to degrade Toledo's coaching staff. Thank you for Quinyon Mitchell. We love him. But if you could get him in an NFL environment and get it all to click, he's going to be really good. Now, because of his age, he's going to drop. But if he was there in the third round, I'm taking that swing. And then the other guy is Deion Walker from Kentucky. He is massive and productive. And a lot of the things that like became knocks on him this year, it came out later. He was playing with like a back injury all season, which explains some of the uprightness and why his tape.
Oh my God, his leverage is all over the place. Yeah, his leverage. Is that true? I didn't know about that.
Yeah. So apparently he was playing, I think it was like a back fracture or something like that in 2024. So he was phenomenal in 23. He has fallen off on 24, but even without explaining that away, if he was there in the third round, I'd take a swing. I mean, 6'6", 345, 21 years old. Let's take a swing.
I agree. Right, moving on. I think edge is the most interesting group of names because there's a lot here I'm going to read that might go first round. My absolute guy in the second round is JT Tuimadu. I don't know how that's how you pronounce it. Probably not. I really, 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 really like him in this sort of fit for the Eagles. Sort of one of those that can play all three downs. I think he's big enough to play on rundowns, but could also drop into coverage. 12.5 sacks last year, incredibly reliable. I don't think he's a bendy rusher, but the Eagles often look for that guy. Then Landon Jackson as well in the second round. I really like. The other guys I like in round 2 are guys that I think are going to go higher. So James Pierce, Nick Skirton. I think they'll go above the second round. I've seen a lot of hype for the Eagles at 32 with Nick. Is it Skulton?
Yeah,
how you pronounce it. I think that's too early, personally.
Agreed. Don't like that at all.
I've seen it. I much prefer him at 64 than I do at 32.
Yeah. I have some of those same names. Princely Uman Mielen, also at 64, is a guy I would like. I don't think he'll be there. Donovan Ezeraku, who I feel like there's been some Eagles taking him at 32 buzz, and I would absolutely hate that because I think that's way too early. But for a second round pick, I like Ezeraku. Then third round, I have guys like Braden Swinson, Jack Sawyer, Ashton Gillette, Jared Ivey. There's a lot of edge rushers, honestly, in this class. And so there's no chance the Eagles are walking out of the first 3 rounds without taking a guy. It's just when and where they do it.
Yeah. Anyone in round 3 in particular? The ones that I've got is Jack Sawyer, who I hate, and I think he's going to go too early. And I think maybe people expect him to go way earlier. Let's talk about one guy, Shane, because he came out in the news today. I saw BGM run it. It was Oluwafemi Oladejo, rumored to be the Eagles' first round pick, Shane. If you can believe that. That was a genuine rumor that came out. I can't remember where it came from, but from somebody who said that he will go a lot higher. I wrote him as like a Jalix Hunt comparison. So it depends if the Eagles want another Jalix Hunt. I had him down in the third round as like an unbelievably sort of freaky, thick, long, powerful, great hands, motor, like tone setter, solid run defender, slams into pullers. I can imagine Fangio loving this guy, but he's so raw. So raw. So I thought I'd mention him because I had him in the third round and there's been some buzz about him going higher than that of late.
Yeah, it's wild looking at some of this stuff. Like, this draft in particular just feels so up in the air because it's like, oh, he's a third rounder, but wait, he might go at 32. Like it's all over the place. So yeah, I don't know what to. So we had a comment here from AP saying, I feel like Princely Uman Mielen is right now what they hope Jalix Hunt will
I'd take him as well. I would take Princely's a really weird one. So where did you have him in your rankings?
I gave him, he was my edge 4. And
wow, you're really high then. All right.
I gave him a second round grade. So he was behind Abdul Carter, Mike Green, and James Pierce for me.
Jeez.
I said that I think he's a stand-up edge / designated pass rusher early in his career with the ability to develop into a 3-down player. He struggles to shed blocks, but he can set the edge. Like, he can keep you from getting outside of him, but he struggles to like then shed and go make a play. And he doesn't really like generate knockback, which I think is something you can work on. And he's very undersized. He's 78th percentile height, only 15th percentile weight, solid closing speed, solid counter moves, solid recognition. I think he just needs to bulk up a little bit. And while he's doing that, I think he can give you some good reps as a pass rusher.
Yeah, I think he might have the most upside of any pass rusher outside Carter, and maybe Walker and Green in this class. Just burst, bend, spin, move, like everything. The reason why I didn't like him, Shane, was actually a little bit of, I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if it was a lack of effort or there was no like pop to his game against the run.
Yeah.
I thought he was lazy. You mentioned him not being able to get off blocks. I think we saw tight ends block him, and I think the Eagles might love him as like a Bryce Huff replacement, like but I think Fangio might hate the way he plays. Could be one of those guys that needs a sort of light a fire under him and coming in here. Maybe Fangio gives him some on day one in training camp and he ends up really turning it around. So in terms of like sheer talent, I think the Eagles will really like him. Speaking of sheer talent, is there anyone at linebacker? Because there is such a lack of talent at linebacker in this class. It's genuinely depressing. And thank God the Eagles signed Zach Bourne.
Yes.
Do you have anyone? I had a Carson Schwessinger in round 2, as I would be intrigued by him.
I have him in round 3.
Fair enough.
I would take a swing on Danny Stutzman or Carson Schwessinger in the 3rd round.
Yeah,
there's nobody I would take in the 2nd.
Yeah, Stutzman just because I'm not sure he can cover. But I think he could be a sort of early down if you want to occasionally use him. But there's nothing, is there? It is nothing at linebacker in this class. It's sort of mental, Shane, when you think that NFL teams have to start like 2 linebackers, basically, 3 if you're playing more old school base, and this is what you've got coming out in the draft. There's no one.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the way it's being taught at college level, the way it's developing, whether these guys are going to safety or whatever, but like you've got to have as many linebackers as you have safeties. And I know safety's a hard position, but there's way more like guys at safety. Oh, well, he's an interesting guy. There's a linebacker. I'm watching guys that's just got like 0 juice at all. Yeah. Like it's sort of how the hell teams are meant to fill up a roster if they come out like this every year? You could barely find like 2 or 3 draftable starting guys. It's pretty rough. Yeah. Right. I think the Eagles have got an extremely high chance of taking a cornerback on day 2. So if they do, I don't like the class that much, but who are your names on if the Eagles go there on day 2?
Maxwell Hairston, but I think he's going to go round 1.
Go early. I don't agree with it, but he will.
I would take him round 2. I would take Benjamin Morrison round 2, which I think we talked about him a little bit last time. Morrison's going to be a good like boundary corner. He's a good boundary corner too, which the Eagles have a CB1, so you can kind of protect him from some matchups there. Darian Porter is interesting.
Just a bit. Yeah.
So at 9.99 relative athletic score, 98th percentile height, 98th percentile vertical, 93rd percentile arm length. The thing with him is he didn't become a starter until this season, which was his 6th college football season. And so he's a very old prospect.
He's so raw.
With limited experience. And that opens up a lot of discussions about what his ceiling is, how quickly he can get there, how long it can last at a position that falls off in their 30s, early 30s quite quickly. I'm always scared of the guy that doesn't do anything until he's a 24-year-old playing against 19-year-olds. But Porter is really interesting. So Darian Porter is an interesting guy to me. And then I will also shout out Siobhan Revel Jr., but I also think he's going to go. Yeah,
see, this is where you sometimes sound negative. Like I'm negative on Siobhan Revel because I have him as a round 2 grade, but I'd love him in round 2.
Yeah, same.
I'm negative on him because all of a sudden he's getting first round bust. I'm like, well, I guess I'm lower on him, but this is where it's all stupid. We don't even know where he's going to get drafted. So I like Revel as a round 2 guy. I just don't think he's a round 1 guy, like limited experience, 1-year starter, tore his ACL in September. To me, that doesn't scream first round pick. I'm to be honest, there's not a lot of other names I love. I'm similar to you. Jacob Parrish is one I really, really like. I think he's a really good scheme fit for Fangio, and that's about it. I've got Darren Porter as well. I got Jacob Parrish in round 2 and 3. I got Isaiah Thomas as well. Maybe the back end of round 2. I don't know if you've got him higher. I think some people really like him. I didn't like the fact he doesn't test with a 40 as well, because that worries me about recovery speed. And I think at corner, that's really important. And that makes you wonder why he didn't. Mm-hmm. And I think he's poor in run support, which matters a lot these days. So I think I'd take a chance on him in the 2nd round because of his like long size, weight, speed type of profile. But I'm not sure I consider him good enough to be drafted then.
All right. What about safety? I know we had the Malachi Stark, Xavier Watts conversation last time. I would take him in the 1st round. You wouldn't.
I did watch more film, by the way. I've basically decided to put Starks, Watts, Evan Worry, and Kevin Winston all in that round 1 to 2 bubble. So I would take any of them in round 1 to 2. I think Winston and Watts.
Wow, you would take Winston round 1 to 2?
Yeah, I really like Winston. I think in terms of pure film, if I had more guts and I wasn't swayed by what other people say, and I'm a little bit and I'm not an idiot. I haven't got time to watch 15 or 22 games of what's he called? Malachi Stark. So when a lot of smart people are telling me one thing, I'm like, right, I'm not going to use the games that I've watched and assume there's people that have watched every single one of his games in college. But I really liked Winston. Incredibly limited, just barely ever played, like one career interception, 694 snaps. Tore his ACL. Everything I'm saying isn't very good. But I think he just looked awesome for a Fangio scheme fit, like range from the middle of the field. I think he'll be great as a split safety. I think he has something that the Eagles need from a safety, which is he can come downhill, get through traffic and hit. And I think he can also play close to the line of scrimmage if you need to. And I think he understood how to play. So he's one that I think I bump him up because of his Fangio range, as in the way he fits in this defense. So I would love him in round 2. The only other guys I've got are Andrew Makuba, who I love the film. I just worry about the size in round 2. Jonas Sanka, I really like as well. Maybe round 2, round 3. He was Tommy Lawler's round 3 Eagles pick, by the way, Jonas Sanka. I have him a little bit higher. My worry with Sanka was that I think he's maybe a bit of I'm still yet to see if he could play as like a starting back-end safety. But I think he can come down and cover wide receivers and tight ends, which is something the Eagles sort of have lost. And then Billy Bowman in the 3rd round. I'm not sure he's draftable. I know we've had this conversation on Patreon. I'm not sure he's draftable because of his tackling, but his movement skills are unbelievable. They are the safety prospects I would consider.
Yeah, so I've got Makuba and Kevin Winston kind of in that back of round 2 area. I would take Watts and Starks in the 1st round, which we talked about that last time. I like Makuba and Winston. I'm a little scared of Winston's lack of experience, but
yes, big time.
And then I've got Billy Bowman in the 3rd round for the same thing.
Like,
I think he's really instinctual. That he's just tiny and can't tackle, and so that's concerning. Yeah.
And when we say can't tackle, 20% plus missed tackle rate 4 years in a row.
25% missed tackle rate over his 4-year career.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely can't tackle.
Right. That was a speedy run through, Shane. So apologies to the people for us being even quick. I say quicker than normal. We're still going 45 minutes. Hopefully we're not starving the people. But we'll leave a little bit of extra waiting for the Patreon shows this week. We're going to get some mock drafts, which although they're a bit funny, they're also really good chances to talk about these prospects. And as always, if you join the Patreon, we've had a few new people join and jump into Discord. You can ask us anything you want at any time about any of the prospects that we've watched. And we will get back to you basically immediately. There we go.
For sure. And you can also check out our draft guides. Jonny has his Excel document that breaks down by position, strengths and weaknesses, and their fit with the Eagles and what rounds he would take guys. So you can read more about these guys that we just mentioned in passing and didn't really go into their stuff. My draft guide is also up, and in it, there's a link to each position group, my scouting reports for them. So you can go read my whole position group scouting reports for these guys. You can read their biographical info, their athletic testing, their stats, their RAS charts, their strengths, weaknesses, what my round grade and scheme fit. It's all there for you guys in Patreon. So if this isn't enough draft content and you want some more, just come head over to the Patreon, join as a $5 a month member just for the month of April. Get our draft stuff. We think you'll stick around because we put out a lot of stuff in there and have maybe some new developments coming around the corner for you guys. So, and as always, if that's not your thing, we certainly appreciate you listening to the podcast feed. That helps us out as well. So any 5-star ratings and reviews for the Eagles Pinpull Network, wherever you stream your podcasts, that helps us get it out there to more people. Like Jonny said, we'll be doing a little bit more Patreon stuff before the draft this week. And then we'll be breaking down prospects that the Eagles actually drafted in depth. Maybe we'll get a prospect's mom in our chat like we did last time with Jalix Hunt interacting with us during a show. That was a lot of fun. You never know. Whatever it is, we'll catch you guys then. So till next time, go Birds.